The most feared man in the house was looking at a door handle, like it could hurt him. Elena saw it from behind her service card. Matteo Varela, the Mafia boss, whose name made dangerous men lower their voices, stood in the amber hallway outside the West Wing. Rain crossed the tall windows in cold lines. His guards were 2 steps back. One checked his phone. The other gave the kind of nod that meant nothing had changed. And Matteo stood there, perfectly still, holding a glass of whiskey he never drank, staring at a brass handle he never touched. She had cleaned that door since she was 19. She knew every rule around it. The glass went on the right side of the console table, 3 inches from the edge, untouched until morning, every night, without fail. Tonight, the glass was on the left. No one else noticed. Elena's hand tightened on the folded linen, because she had been watching this house long enough to know small things moved here for a reason, and something, or someone, had reached into the one place in this mansion where Matteo Varela's control ran thin. She should have lowered her eyes. In this house, servants survived by knowing which moments did not belong to them. Silence was protection. Silence was how her mother had lasted 27 years under ceilings painted with other people's money. But the door was not fully closed. It rested in the frame, with a thin black line showing between wood and shadow, too deliberate to be an accident, too thin for any guard to catch from 10 feet away. "Leave it," Matteo said quietly. Before anyone had spoken, his voice barely moved, but every man in the hallway went still. Elena lowered her gaze. Too late. His eyes had already found her reflection in the rain-dark window. For 1 second, neither of them moved. She was the maid with the linen cart. He was the man. No one interrupted. And between them sat a glass on the wrong side of a table. A door left open by someone who understood exactly which wound to press. Elena spent the next morning pretending her hands were steady. The house helped her lie. Coffee smelled like normal. Guards changed shifts like normal. The west hallway had been cleaned so thoroughly, the wrongness should have disappeared with the mop water. It did not. She folded napkins and turned it over in her mind. The glass on the left, the door, Matteo saying leave it before anyone asked. He had not sounded angry. Anger in that house had shape. Men stepped back from it. Doors closed around it. What she heard last night was smaller and worse, a command given to stop the room from speaking. Her mother used to say, the rich leave evidence in habits, not words. Elena had first come to this mansion at 8 years old, sitting in the service pantry with a paper cup of milk, while a younger Matteo passed by in a school blazer too stiff for his shoulders. He had paused, moved a silver tray away from the edge, before her elbow knocked it over. She had not built a dream from it. Children notice small mercies. Because the world gives them few, adults learn not to make promises from them. She was 30 now, in a gray uniform, with the hem repaired twice. And Matteo Varela was no longer the boy who moved a tray. He was a man whose name changed the temperature of rooms, but he had always noticed falling things before they fell. That was why last night disturbed her. At noon, she carried towels toward the east guest rooms. The guards near the staircase were arguing under their breath. The West Wing camera feed had flickered for 9 seconds during the storm. One said that was just weather. Elena kept walking with her eyes down, but her pace changed. 9 seconds was long enough to cross a console table, long enough to move a glass, long enough to open a forbidden door and make a powerful man remember Miss Alvarez. She stopped. Matteo stood at the end of the corridor without a jacket. Black sleeves rolled to his forearms. tattoos disappearing beneath expensive fabric. He should have looked less dangerous in daylight. He did not. Behind him, Rojas waited with a tablet and the patience of a man who wanted everything reduced to reports. Elena held the towels against her chest. "Sir, you were in the west hallway last night." It was not a question. "I was clearing service," she said. His gaze held hers for 1 second. Then it moved not to her face, not to her uniform, but to her hands, to the place where her fingers pressed too tightly into white cotton. "What did you see?" The correct answer was nothing. Every person below stairs knew that word. Nothing kept you employed. Nothing kept you outside family wars. Nothing let you sleep behind a locked door, believing the dangerous world ended at the city's edge. Elena looked past him toward the window. The door was open. Rojas gave a short laugh. "Imposible." Mateo did not look at him. How open the question was too specific. It told her. He had already stood before that room, after everyone left, and measured the same black line in his mind. Less than an inch. She said, "Enough to show shadow, not enough for the camera from the arch." Rojas stopped laughing. Mateo's face did not change, but something in his right hand did. His thumb pressed once against the side of his ring finger, a controlled movement, almost invisible. Elena would have missed it if she had not spent years watching people hide what they feared from those who paid them. "Anything else?" he asked. She could feel the house listening. A cook pausing near the pantry door, a guard pretending to check his earpiece, Rojas staring now with something colder than suspicion. Elena had crossed from service into knowledge. There was no clean way back. The glass was moved, she said. No one spoke. Mateo's eyes stayed on her, as if he were deciding whether she had saved him from something or stepped too close to the part of him he kept buried. Rojas recovered first. Housekeeping touches glasses all day. "Not that glass," Elena said. Before fear could stop her, she knew it came out too direct. Servants were allowed to answer. They were not allowed to know, but Mateo did not correct her. He waited, and because he waited, she had to finish. "It is always on the right side of the console, 3 inches from the edge. I wipe the ring mark every morning. Last night it was on the left. Someone wanted you to see the door before the glass, or the glass before the door. I do not know which." Mateo turned his head slightly toward the west wing. For half a breath, he was no longer in the corridor. He was somewhere behind that door, with whatever memory made a glass stay full every night. Then he came back. "Who has access to this floor after midnight?" Rojas answered. "Assigned security. Family staff. Approved service. We can pull logs. Logs show doors." Elena said softly. "Not habits." The words should have ruined her, but Mateo's eyes shifted back, and the pause that followed was not anger. It was recognition, reluctant and careful, as if he had heard the difference between a servant guessing and a woman telling him how the house breathed. When powerful men stopped paying attention, he took the towels from her arms himself. Even Rojas looked away. Mateo did not do kindness in public. He did not touch service work. He held the folded towels for 1 moment, then placed them on the narrow table beside him, clearing her hands as if he wanted to see whether they were still trembling. "They will ask why you noticed," he said. "I know. And what will you tell them?" She looked toward the west hallway, where a door had been left open by someone who knew the exact hour. "Grief made a dangerous man stand alone. That I clean what they walk past." His eyes softened. barely. Then the softness was gone. "Do not go near that door again," he said. It sounded like an order. Elena heard what sat underneath it. He did not yet know whether he was protecting his secret from her, or her from the secret. By evening, the mansion had built a story around what happened. Electrical interference. A careless staff member. Guards checked cameras twice. Rojas sent men through the West Wing with devices that blinked green at every lock and window frame. Houses like this survived by turning danger into procedure. Elena watched from the laundry doorway as they finished their sweep. None of them checked the small brass clock across from the forbidden room. None of them noticed it had stopped at 1217. She noticed because she had wounded herself the previous afternoon at midnight, while the house went quiet and rain started again. Elena stood at the far end of the service passage and watched Mateo enter the west hallway alone. No guard followed past the arch. No camera moved. No one stopped him from keeping the same appointment with the same closed door. Someone had known that, too, by morning. The brass clock across from the forbidden room was ticking again. No one admitted touching it. Elena stood at the laundry press with a stack of black shirts cooling under her palms, listening to that sound move through the house. Each small click said the same thing: someone had corrected a mistake before the mistake could be named. The guards had counted doors, access cards, camera angles, storm interference, 9 missing seconds. They did not count what grief made a man repeat. They did not count the way Mateo only stopped before the west room after the house lights dimmed to the night setting. They did not count the untouched whiskey, the table mark beneath it, the clock face across from it, or the fact that every small object near that door had been arranged like a private ritual. Elena counted because that was how her mother survived inside powerful houses. You noticed what changed before anyone important felt embarrassed by it. In the Varela mansion, emotional weather moved before violence did. A chair shifted. A glass stayed full. A guard laughed too quickly. A door stood open by less than an inch. At 10, Rojas called the household staff together. He stood beneath the old copper pans with a tablet in one hand and suspicion arranged neatly on his face. Cooks, drivers, cleaners, laundry women, all eyes down. Rojas asked who had been in the West Wing after dinner. No one answered beyond their assigned duties. When Elena gave her time, Rojas repeated it. 11:47 to 12:11. Yes. And you remember that exactly. I signed the linen sheet at 11:46. The cartwheel sticks near the gallery rug. It takes longer to turn there. A few staff glanced at her, then looked away. Specific memory made people nervous here. It proved attention, and in a mansion built on secrets, attention could be mistaken for intent. You notice many things, Miss Alvarez. Elena kept her voice even. Only the things I'm paid to clean. The answer should have ended it. Instead, someone at the table breathed out softly. Mateo stood in the doorway. He wore a charcoal shirt open at the collar, his hair still damp. The tattoos at his throat disappeared beneath the fabric, as if even ink had learned discipline around him. He looked at Rojas first, then at the staff, then at Elena, where his gaze stopped, without making the stop obvious. Ask what matters, Mateo said. Rojas's jaw tightened. We are establishing movement. You are establishing comfort. Mateo answered. There is a difference. The room went still. Mateo did not usually correct his men in front of household staff. This public cut meant something had reached deeper than procedure. It also meant Elena's name had become attached to the thing no one wanted to understand. Rojas closed his tablet. Then, what matters? Mateo looked toward the service corridor, as if he could see through it to the west room. Who knew I would be there? No one answered. That question followed Elena through the rest of the day. At 2, she was sent to replace flowers in the East Library and passed the west hallway through a detour. 2 guards stood at the arch. The forbidden door was shut. The console table held only the whiskey glass. Now, empty, polished, so clean, it caught the amber light like a small eye. Empty. Elena shifted the flower vase in her arms. That glass was never empty. It was always full when she cleaned it in the morning. Untouched enough to leave a perfect ring beneath the base. Someone had washed it. Either answer was wrong, because the ritual had rules. And one rule was that no one touched that glass before dawn, except Mateo, who never drank from it. Keep moving, a guard said. She obeyed. In the library, she set the vase down between 2 leather chairs, cut the stems, removed bruised petals. Small order against larger danger. Then she saw the single white rose inside the wastebasket. The Varela house used red roses in the dining room, dark calla lilies in the foyer, eucalyptus in the guest baths. White roses were not part of the rotation. Elena knew because she handled the florist invoices every Monday. This rose was fresh, stem clean, head slightly bent, as if it had been held too long in a warm hand. She did not touch it. A glass cleaned before its hour. A flower where no flower belonged. The same hand had stopped the clock. Moved the whiskey. Left the door open. Whoever it was understood the room. They also understood that Mateo's men would search for devices, fingerprints, electronic entry, obvious threats. They would not ask why a flower could be more dangerous than a blade. When Elena returned to the service corridor, Mateo was waiting near the narrow window facing the inner courtyard. He had dismissed the guards without seeming to bow. He held the white rose by the stem with a folded handkerchief, careful not to let his skin touch it. You saw this. Yes, and you left it. It wasn't mine to move. A faint shift passed through his expression. Not approval. Approval from men like Mateo came with ownership, something more guarded than that. Do you know what it means? No, she said. Then why did you look afraid? She could have said she was not afraid, but that would have insulted both of them, because it was left where your men would dismiss it. Mateo's eyes lifted. The glass was too small for them. Elena continued carefully. The clock was too ordinary. The flower is too soft. They keep looking for someone trying to break in. This feels like someone trying to make you open something yourself. Silence settled between them. In another house, the white rose might have looked sentimental. In this one, beneath the amber light and rain-streaked glass, it looked like a message written in a language only one man was supposed to bleed from. You should not understand that, he said. I understand rooms after people leave them. The answer reached him more deeply than she intended. He turned away first. When he spoke again, his voice had returned to its old control. From now on, if anything in the West Wing changes you, tell me before you tell Rojas. It placed her closer to him and farther from safety. Elena felt the line move under her feet. Sir, she said, because no other answer fit, and Miss Alvarez. She looked up. If you are guessing, stop. I'm not guessing. The words came out quiet. They changed the corridor. His eyes stayed on hers. And for the first time, she saw the real problem settle between them. He did not fear that she was wrong. He feared that she was right, and that someone in his own house had learned exactly which quiet object could make him hesitate. Elena began watching the West Wing, the way a person watches water rise under a closed door, quietly, without staring. By late afternoon, the white rose had been removed, the glass replaced with the usual full one. The brass clock wound so tightly, its ticking sounded too eager. The mansion had corrected the visible mistakes. That only made the invisible pattern clearer. The glass appeared at 1130 every night, carried by no assigned server. Signed on, no service sheet, always right side of the console, 3 inches from the edge. Label turned away from the forbidden door. Matteo came alone after midnight, dismissed his men before the arch, stayed less than 2 minutes, unless it was raining. On heavy rain nights, he stayed longer. That detail stayed with Elena. Rain had weight in that house. It softened footsteps, blurred camera glass, made guards hurry between posts. It also pulled Matteo toward that door. She remembered storm nights from childhood, in the service pantry, the older women speaking softer, no one using the west stairs unless called. She remembered her mother once taking a tray from another maid, saying quietly, "Not tonight. He hears enough when it rains." Elena had thought she meant thunder, near 6. She found a maintenance note tucked behind the laundry clipboard. West Wing vent check. Untouched M. Authorized. No name below the line. The handwriting looked official, but the paper was wrong. Varela household work orders used cream stock with the family crest pressed faintly into the top. This was plain white, cut slightly, crooked at the bottom, taken from a personal pad. She folded it and put it in her apron pocket. That was the moment she stopped feeling like she had noticed a disturbance and understood she had been placed inside one. The glass, the clock, the rose, the vent note. Each object was small enough to deny. Together, they made a path toward midnight. A person did not need to break Matteo Varela's house if they could teach the house to guide him into an old wound. She waited until the staff dinner cleared, then carried coffee toward the private study. 2 guards outside. One moved to stop her, then paused when Matteo's voice came from inside. "Let her in." The study smelled of leather, cedar, and rain through a cracked window. Beside a folder on the desk sat the white rose, sealed inside a clear evidence sleeve. Elena took the maintenance note from her apron. This was placed on the laundry board. Matteo read it once. His face closed around the words. "It sends someone to the West Wing before midnight," she said. "Not through security, through routine." He put the paper on the desk. "Who handles maintenance requests?" she explained. "Rojas approves security work. House management routes repairs. Laundry sees them because the staff moves through closed corridors. And you know this paper is wrong?" "Yes, because of the crest, and because the bottom edge was cut by hand. The office cutter leaves a cleaner line." For a moment, Matteo only looked at her. The office cutter, such a small detail inside a conversation about the threat. And yet, his stillness changed. She had given him something his men had not, a way to see the attack without turning it into noise. He took the note and walked toward the fireplace. Above the mantel hung a photograph in a narrow silver frame. 3 people under a white awning on a rain-dark terrace. Matteo younger, unsmiling, but but less guarded. An older woman with a hand on his shoulder, a girl beside them, half turned away from the camera, holding a white rose against her dark dress. Elena had never asked who they were. People who cleaned expensive rooms learned that photographs were sometimes more private than locked drawers. Matteo saw her glance at it. The silence sharpened. "I'm sorry," Elena said. "For what?" "For seeing it." He did not answer quickly. Rain struck the window in soft, uneven lines. He looked at the photograph as if it had become a door inside the room. "Me sister," he said. The words were quiet enough that Elena almost wished she had not heard them. "She died in the West Room," she asked, then regretted it before the sentence finished. Matteo turned back. There was no anger in his face. That made it harder to look at him. "No." She waited there. Elena stayed still. She was 17. There was a storm. I was late getting home. Men who wanted my father reached her before they reached me. His voice stayed level. The levelness had effort inside it. The room was where she waited for me to take her to dinner. White roses on the table. Whiskey for my father. The clock stopped during the outage. The room seemed to draw itself around those objects. Rose, glass, clock, rain. None of it random. These were not symbols chosen by an outsider guessing at grief. They were pieces from a night the house still carried in its walls. Elena understood then why the glass stayed full. Not for Matteo, for the man who had not arrived, the family ritual frozen before violence entered. Or maybe it was his punishment repeated every night in a corridor. No one was allowed to name. He had built an empire around control and left one small ceremony uncontrolled. Because grief obeyed no command. "Who knows?" that she asked. "Too many people knew she died." "That's not what I asked." It was the sharpest thing she had said to him. One guard shifted outside the door. Matteo stepped closer, slow enough not to frighten her, close enough that she saw the red thread in his tired eyes. Very few people know the glass was whiskey. Fewer know the clock stopped at 1, 2, 1, 7. Almost no one knows about the white roses. Almost, she said. The word held. Matteo looked at the evidence sleeve on his desk. My father's old circle. A few household staff from that year. Men who are dead. Loyal. Or expensive enough to pretend to be both. Elena thought of the staff list. The access logs. The way Rojas dismissed anything too soft to catalog. The white rose in the wastebasket. The maintenance note on plain cut paper. This was not a direct attack. It was a question placed inside the house. Can we still make him walk toward the night he failed? Untouched. Matteo told her to stay away from the West Wing. Untouched. Elena went to the service passage instead, not for bravery. Bravery was too clean a word. She went because the note had named 1, 4, 5. And because if she did nothing, every sound in this mansion would become a door opening in her mind. She kept to the servant corridor behind the west wall, where old vents carried voices better than they carried air. Footsteps approached from the main hallway. 2 sets, one heavier, one careful. Then the soft metallic sound of the console table drawer opening. Elena froze. The console table had no drawer. She pressed her palm against the wall and watched. Through the narrow service grate, a man's sleeve passed beneath the amber light. Dark suit, white cuff, no face. He placed something beside the glass, then withdrew, before the camera angle could catch more than movement. Atunci sprezece patruzeci, she șapte. The clock across from the room stopped. This time Elena saw how a thin wire, nearly invisible against the brass casing, pulled from behind the frame and released from the service side. Someone had prepared it earlier. Someone who knew the guards would watch the door and not the wall behind it. She moved before fear could argue, down the service passage, bang around the laundry bend, past the closed flower room where unused vases glowed faintly in the dark. By the time she reached the west arch, Matteo was already there alone, his hand near the glass. Beside it lay a white rose and a folded card. He had not opened the card yet. Don't, Elena said. The word left her too loud for the hallway. Matteo's head turned. 2 guards stepped forward. Rojas appeared from the far end, his face hard with the satisfaction of catching someone where she should not be. Elena did not look at him. She looked at Matteo. They want your hand on it. His eyes dropped to the card, then the rose, then the clock. Frozen again at 1217. For 1 second, the strongest man in the house did nothing. No order, no movement, no mask settling back into place. Only stillness, exposed enough for her to understand the truth fully. His weakness was not his dead sister. It was the part of him that still answered when the past called his name, and someone in the house had learned how to call it. Step away from Mr. Varela, Rojas said, appearing behind Elena now. Too close. She did not move. She knew how fast a house like this could decide a servant had become inconvenient. 1 sentence could turn her from witness into problem. So she kept her eyes on Matteo. The only person in that corridor who understood the card was not paper. It was bait. Matteo lowered his hand slowly. No one touches it. She was in the service passage without clearance. Rojas said, "She warned me before I opened it. She knew where to be." The guards shifted. Dangerous men preferred betrayal with a simple shape. A maid, near a forbidden room, a hidden passage. Knowledge she should not have. It was easier than admitting someone inside their circle had built a trap out of a dead girl's memory. Matteo looked at Elena, and for the first time, his gaze did not protect her from the room. It measured the danger around her. He saw what Rojas was doing. He also saw the evidence Rojas could use. Where were you? The service corridor behind the west wall. Why? Because the note said 1145. Because the clock was rigged from that side. Because your men watch doors and miss grief. None of those answers were safe. Elena folded her hands in front of her uniform. Because someone wanted you alone here. Rojas gave a short, cold laugh. Convenient. Matteo did not look away from her. Answer the question. The command struck differently than Rojas's accusation. It did not ask her to defend herself. It asked her to trust him with the shape of her fear. Elena hated that she understood the difference. The maintenance note was false. She said, "It sent someone to this wing before midnight. The clock was stopped from the service side. I thought if I told security first, whoever placed it might hear." Rojas stepped forward. "You had evidence and concealed it." Elena looked at him then. "I had a paper no one would believe. A flower everyone dismissed. And a clock your men checked after it had already been reset." The words came out steadier than she felt. Rojas went still. The guards around him did too. In a house like this, a servant did not name incompetence. She certainly did not name it in front of the man everyone served. Mateo's eyes moved to Roch's. The clock. Rojas did not answer quickly enough. It was inspected. From the hallway, yes. Not from behind the wall. No. The silence that followed was the first real crack in the authority of security. Elena felt it move through the corridor. Not loud, not dramatic, just a small redistribution of trust, taken from one man and not yet given to another. Bring gloves. A tray. Seal it here, Mateo said. One guard left quickly. Rojas stayed. Miss Alvarez should be held until we know how much she knows. Rojas said, held for her own safety. There it was, the soft language that locked doors. Elena felt her stomach tighten. She did not step back, because nowhere to step did not prove fear. Mateo watched Rojas for a long moment, and the hallway seemed to remember every order ever given there. No, Mateo said. Sir, she goes back to her quarters. That is not secure. It is not a request. Rojas lowered his eyes, but not before Elena saw what passed through them. Resentment, calculation. A man who had been corrected in front of staff and would need the world to become orderly again. The guard returned with gloves and an evidence tray. Mateo lifted the card himself with careful fingers and placed it flat under the amber light. The paper was cream-colored, folded once. On the outside, in black ink, someone had written one line, "You were late again." No one spoke. Elena saw the sentence enter him with more force than a blade would have. His face did not change, but his breath stopped so completely that the hallway seemed to wait for it to return. The card had not threatened his life. It had accused the part of him that still stood before that door every night, asking the same silent question when he breathed again. It was controlled. Too controlled. Clear the wing, he said. The guards moved. Rojas began issuing orders. Mateo lifted one hand and stopped him. Everyone, he said. Rojas started. You want to remain here alone? Mateo looked at Elena. No. The corridor took half a second to understand. Anabi won. The men left. Their footsteps retreated beyond the arch. The camera above blinked red. Rain struck the windows in long silver threads. Elena stood beside the service wall, with her hands cold at her sides. More visible than she had ever been in that mansion, Mateo stood before the door. The glass, the rose, the stopped clock, the accusation left by someone who knew which wound had never closed. You should have gone to your room, he said. Yes. Why didn't you, Elena? Kept her eyes on the card. Because you would have opened it. He gave a quiet exhale. It might have been anger. It might have been something tired that had no proper name. You think you know me well enough to decide that. No, she said. I know enough about rooms after people leave them. This hallway was arranged to make you stop thinking like a living man. His shoulders stilled. Outside, thunder moved beyond the windows. Mateo looked at the forbidden door. Elena waited for him to tell her. She had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. Instead, he said nothing. For so long, the silence became its own confession. Then he asked, "And what do you think is behind that door?" There were safer answers. Dust, memory, your sister. None of them were enough now. The night you still punish yourself for, she said. Mateo's eyes closed once. Only once. Quick. Almost controlled enough to hide. But not from her. You should choose your next words carefully. he said. I know. That was not permission to continue. I know that too. His gaze sharpened. She almost stepped back. She remembered her mother leaving this mansion after 27 years with swollen knuckles, a severance envelope, and one warning. Never let a powerful family know you can read their pain. But Elena had already been seen. They are not trying to kill you tonight, she said. Mateo's face stayed still. They could have placed something under the table, used the missing camera seconds to get closer. They didn't. They wanted your hand on the card. They wanted you alone, angry, ashamed, and distracted. Then they would learn whether the old wound still opens. Mateo took one step toward her. Careful. The warning was quiet, almost gentle. That made it more dangerous. He was not threatening her because she was wrong. He was asking her not to be right, in a way he could not bear in the open. Elena held her ground. Your weakness is not the room. His eyes changed. It is not the rose. It is not the glass. It is not even your sister. Mateo's hand flexed once, then stilled at his side. She saw the discipline in that stillness, the force it took him not to turn away, not to order her out, not to bury the moment under power, because power was easier than being known. Stop, he said. It is the part of you that still comes when the past calls. The hallway went silent, in a way Elena had never heard before. Even the rain seemed farther away. Mateo looked at her, as if she had placed a hand against a locked wound, and named the shape of it through the door. His face did not break. Instead, something went absent from his eyes for one breath, then returned, with pain folded so tightly, it almost looked like anger. You do not get to speak of her, he said. No, Elena answered. I don't. Then don't. But they are speaking of her through objects, through a clock, through a flower, through a sentence meant to put you back in that night. If I stay silent, because it is not my place. They keep using her voice better than anyone who loved her. The last words were too much. She knew it. Mateo turned away so sharply, the amber light cut across his jaw. His hand came down on the console table, not hard enough to break it, but hard enough to make the whiskey tremble in the glass. One drop slid over the rim and darkened the polished wood. Mateo stared at the drop. Elena did too. The spill was small, nearly nothing, but it changed everything. The glass was no longer untouched. The punishment had been disturbed. The old night had been interrupted by the present. Mateo's voice came low. My father told me grief made men careless. He said, if I wanted to survive, I should treat every loss like a room to be locked. He looked at the forbidden door. So I locked it and still came back every night. She said. His eyes returned to her. And this time, there was no command in them, only the weariness of being understood in a place built to prevent it. My sister hated whiskey, he said. Elena did not interrupt. She said the smell made the house feel old. She put white roses everywhere because my father hated anything that looked soft. His mouth moved slightly, not a smile, just a memory, touching the edge of one. The glass was his. The roses were hers. The clock stopped when the power went out. I remember thinking, if I had arrived before it started again, she would still be there. The words did not come like confession. They came like facts, carried too long in a closed hand. Someone knows you still believe timing could have saved her, Elena said. Mateo looked at the clock, and now they are changing time around you, stopping it, repeating it, leaving things where your hand will go. They are trying to make you obey a memory before you obey what you know. His breath moved in slowly, the kind of breath a man takes before doing something violent or before choosing not to. Then Matteo reached for the whiskey glass. Elena tensed. He did not drink. He lifted it, looked at the dark liquid, and poured it into the vase where one white rose stood under the amber light. The whiskey stained the water gold brown around the stem. She would have hated that, he said. It was quiet, almost rough. For years, that glass had stayed full because it needed to remain exactly as it was. Now he had ruined the ritual himself, not healed it, not erased it, ruined it enough to make the enemy's next move less certain. Matteo set the empty glass down on the left side of the table. This time, deliberately, the act moved through the hallway like a decision. He turned toward the camera above the arch. Rojas. The guard appeared almost instantly. Sir, pull every staff file from the year my sister died. Cross it with current access to service walls. Flower orders. Clock maintenance. Private floor movement. Rojas's eyes flicked to Elena, and Miss Alvarez Mateo did not let the glance remain unanswered. Miss Alvarez reports to me. The sentence was calm. It still changed her life. Reporting to him protected her from Rojas in one way and placed her under a brighter, colder light in another, in a Mafia house. Becoming trusted did not mean becoming safe. It meant becoming valuable enough for enemies to measure. Rojas's obedience came a fraction late. Understood? No, Mateo said. You will understand after you find who used your floor as a stage. Rojas lowered his eyes. Mateo looked back at Elena only after the guard left. The rain had softened again. The card remained sealed on the tray, robbed of some of its power, now that it had been read without being obeyed. You should be afraid, he said. I am. Of me, Elena was tired enough to tell the truth. Less than I was. Yesterday, that answer held him still. It did not flatter him. It did not offer forgiveness. He had not earned. It only marked the shift between them with the precision he had begun to trust. You understand what happens now? He asked. They know I saw it. Yes. And you can't make me unseen again. His gaze stayed on her. No. He could order men out of hallways, seal rooms, erase names from ledgers, but he could not return Elena to the quiet protection of being overlooked. She had stepped into the space between his grief and the person using it. Mateo reached for the white rose in the whiskey-stained vase. He broke the stem shorter and laid the flower on the empty tray beside the card. Then we stop, pretending invisibility is protection, he said. He looked toward the forbidden door one last time. Then, without opening it, he turned away. That was the part no enemy had planned for. They had arranged the corridor to make him go back into the past. Elena had made him stay in the present long enough to refuse. By morning, the house no longer knew where to place Elena. She was still in the same gray uniform, still carrying folded linen through dangerous corridors. But the air changed before she entered rooms now. Conversations stopped too early. Guards watched without pretending not to. In the kitchen, one of the younger maids moved Elena's coffee cup away from the others, as if trust could spread by touch. Elena noticed and said nothing. Her work assignment had been rewritten. No West Wing, no guest suites, no access to the service wall behind the forbidden room. Duties that kept her below stairs and away from the places where she had become useful. It should have felt safe. It did not. At 10, she found a white rose stem tucked beneath the office cutter in the service room. No petals, just the stem, cut short, thorns left on. Beside it, a narrow strip of paper with no words, only a time written in black ink. Er itzi. Elena did not pick it up. She looked at the door, the vent above the filing cabinet, her own face in the dark window, tired and too still. Whoever left the rose stem no longer needed to speak only to Matteo. They had learned she could read the language too when she stepped into the corridor. Matteo was already there. No guard announced him. No footsteps warned her. He stood near the stair, landing in a black coat. Rain still clinging to his shoulders, as if he had walked straight past every rule Rojas had tried to build around the morning. His eyes moved once to the service room. You saw it? Yes. What did you touch? Nothing. A small pause. He nodded not, as a man receiving obedience, but as a man accepting competence. Rojas appeared with a file. We can move her to the east staff quarters. Until this is contained, Matteo did not turn. No, her presence on the main floor is now a pressure point. She was already a pressure point when you failed to check the clock from the service side. Rojas's file bent slightly under his thumb. You will continue your route, Matteo told Elena. Rojas glanced up. That increases exposure. It also shows us who reacts. Elena understood then that protection in Matteo's world did not always look like hiding. Hiding her would tell the enemy she mattered. Keeping her visible might draw the next movement into the open. Then Matteo added one sentence, only if she agrees. Rojas looked at him as if the grammar itself had become a threat. Men like Matteo did not place choices in the hands of women who folded their sheets. The offer was not soft. It was not romantic. It was dangerous and practical, and strange enough to make the corridor feel newly unsteady. If I say no, Elena asked, you go to your quarters. 2 guards. No one enters without my clearance. And after that, Matteo's eyes held hers. After that, I find another way. It was the first time he had not made her usefulness the condition of her safety. I'll continue, she said. The day unfolded with the precision of a trap turned inside out. Elena carried flowers to the East Library and noticed the vendor code in the invoice had been altered by 1 digit. She delivered towels to the guest bath and found the window latch polished clean while the rest of the brass showed dust. She passed the blue sitting room and heard a man she did not know and mention old household staff before his voice stopped at her footsteps. Each detail went to Matteo through a channel he built without announcing it. A folded laundry slip, an untouched coffee cup, a call bell rung in a specific sequence. Nothing Rojas's men could follow. At dusk. The first real answer came from the flower invoices. The white roses had not been ordered through the mansion account. They had come through a funeral supplier, paid in cash, delivered under the name Clara Vale. Elena found the name because the altered vendor code led to an archived invoice from 17 years earlier, the week of Matteo's sister's memorial. Clara Vale had been the old housekeeper before Elena's mother. The name put the past too close to the service stairs. Matteo read the invoice in the study while rain darkened the windows. She left the house after the funeral. My father dismissed half the staff that month. Where is she now, dead? He said, 6 years. Elena looked at the invoice again. Then someone is using dead names. Yes, someone who has old records. Matteo's gaze sharpened. Or someone who has access to the person keeping them. The realization passed between them without being spoken. Records, staff files, old service routes, memorial suppliers, clock repairs, flower habits. The enemy had not been inside the house for one night. They had been reading it like Elena did, only with a colder purpose. Rojas entered before Mateo called him. That was his mistake. He stopped, just inside the study door. I saw the invoice on the desk, saw Elena standing there, and understood too late that the room had shifted without him. You found something, Rojas said. Mateo's voice stayed calm. You did. Rojas did not move. The staff files from the year my sister died. Mateo continued. You pulled them last night. You told me 3 were missing. You did not tell me 1 had been copied 6 weeks ago. Rojas looked at Elena then. There was no suspicion left in his eyes, only dislike. Stripped clean, Mateo moved around the desk, slow and measured, placing himself at an angle that changed the line between Rojas and her. Small, deliberate, protective, without making her disappear. Who requested the copy? Mateo asked. Rojas's mouth tightened. Alegal audit. There was no audit. Outside. Thunder moved over the city. Inside. Every quiet detail Elena had noticed seemed to gather in one place. The false note, the reset clock, the cleaned glass, the dead housekeeper's name, the rose stem beneath the cutter. Rojas had not needed to plant every object himself. Men like him had people for that. What mattered was access, timing, and the confidence that anything emotional would be dismissed as weakness. You are becoming predictable, Rojas said. Mateo did not answer. They watch you from outside and think fear makes you powerful. It doesn't. Routine does. Grief does. Every night. Same hallway. Same glass. Same dead girl. His eyes moved to Elena. Then she started watching better than the men paid to protect you. Who paid you? Mateo asked. Rojas smiled without warmth. You still think this is about payment? Elena heard the lie in that. Not because she knew crime, because she knew service. People who acted from loyalty spoke differently than people trying to make greed sound philosophical. He was paid, she said. Rojas turned his head slowly. He says routine because he wants it to sound like insight. Elena continued, keeping her voice quiet, but he copied invoices, used dead staff names, and staged soft objects because he needed someone outside this house to believe he still had access to you. This was proof of reach. Mateo did not look at her, but the room shifted around the sentence. Rojas's face hardened. Careful. Maid. Mateo moved then. He did not lunga. He did not raise his voice. He stepped into the space between them with a stillness so complete that Rojas stopped breathing for half a second. Say her name, Mateo said. Rojas looked at him. Her name. Mateo repeated. The silence stretched to every corner of the study. Rojas lowered his eyes first. Miss Alvarez. That was the moment the hierarchy changed, not because Rojas respected her, but because Mateo had made disrespect costly in front of the room, without turning her into a trophy or a spectacle. He had not said she belonged to him. He had insisted she be named. The guard outside entered after Mateo's smallest nod. Rojas did not resist. Men like him knew when the room no longer belonged to them. As he was led out, his gaze returned to Elena, once flat and unfinished. The danger had a face now. It also had a memory of her, later. When the study was cleared, and the invoice sealed. Elena stood in the west hallway with Matteo. The forbidden door was closed. The whiskey glass sat empty on the left side of the console. The brass clock had been removed from the wall, leaving a pale square where time used to hang. Rain moved against the windows, and the amber lights gave the corridor the same warmth that had made the first night look almost gentle. Matteo stood beside her. Not in front. He knows I matter now, she said. Yes, you let that happen. Matteo accepted the accusation without defense. I did. Why his answer did not come quickly. That made it more honest, because hiding you would have been another way of using you, he said, and I have used enough silence in this house. Elena looked away first. At midnight, he did not come to the west hallway alone. She was returning the final linen cart to storage when she saw him at the arch. He could have sent for her. He did not. He waited until she noticed, then stepped aside, leaving enough room for her to pass if she wanted to refuse. She did not pass. Together, they stood before the closed door. The white rose was gone. The clock was gone. The glass remained empty. Placed on the left by his own hand, Matteo looked at the door for a long time. Then he turned to Elena. Tell me what I'm missing. The question carried more weight than any apology he could have offered. Elena studied the hallway, the table, the frame of the door, the reflection in the rain-dark window. Then she looked at him, at the tiredness under his eyes, at the control, still there, but no longer pretending to be untouched. You're standing here, she said, but you're not gone. Matteo's Chase held hers. The old ritual had demanded a ghost. The new silence allowed a living man to breathe inside it. That was not peace. Peace would have been too much to ask from a house like this. It was trust, still narrow, still dangerous, but real enough to alter the way the hallway held them. The house became quieter after Rojas was taken below the garage level before dawn. No one told the staff where he went. No one needed to. Absence in the Varela mansion had its own language. A key missing from the hook. A chair removed from the security office. A name no longer spoken near the coffee machine. Elena returned to work because ordinary tasks were the only way she knew to measure whether she still belonged to herself. She folded sheets, signed the linen log. The younger maids watched her with fear and curiosity, waiting for her to become arrogant, favored, changed into something easier to resent. She disappointed them by staying careful. Matteo did not summon her for 2 days. Men like him could mistake access for intimacy. He did not. He passed her once near the blue sitting room while speaking to an attorney on the phone, and his eyes moved to her, only long enough to confirm she was unharmed. Then he looked away before the house could make a story from it. On the third night, rain returned. Elena was carrying fresh towels past the west arch when she saw the forbidden door open, fully open. No guard at the threshold, no white rose on the table, no whiskey glass anywhere. The console had been cleared, polished, and left bare, except for a small brass key placed in the center. Matteo stood inside the room, not turned toward the past. He was looking at the windows. Miss Alvarez. His voice gave her the choice to remain where she was. She stood at the doorway. The room was smaller than she expected. A writing desk, a covered piano, shelves with books. No one had dusted properly, because no one had been allowed inside long enough to learn their order. On the wall near the window hung a photograph she had not seen before. Matteo's sister laughing, with a white rose tucked behind her ear, caught mid-motion, as if she had turned away from someone calling her name. The room did not look haunted. It looked neglected by grief and protected from air. Matteo followed her gaze. Her name was Lucia. Elena nodded once. It squeezed her. A silence moved through the room, careful but no longer punishing. I had the glass removed, he said. I saw. The clock, too. Yes. He looked at the bare console beyond the open door. For years, I thought, if I changed nothing, I was keeping the last honest record of that night. Elena stayed just outside the threshold. And now I think I gave other people a map. The answer was plain. It carried no performance. Matteo crossed to the desk and lifted a small wooden box. He removed a folded paper and held it before offering it to her. Elena did not take it immediately. What is it? A list of changes to household procedure. Service route. Reporting channels. Access to old files. Your mother's name is removed from any archived clearance still attached to this house. So is yours. Unless you choose otherwise. Choose. He used the word carefully now, as if he knew how rare it had been in these walls. You're dismissing me, she asked. No. The answer came too quickly for a man so controlled. He heard it too, and let the silence correct him. I am making sure your safety is not dependent on staying close to me, he said. Protection in his world usually meant ownership with better lighting. Men were moved, doors were locked, lives reorganized around fear and called security. But this was different. He had opened the room, removed the ritual, and offered her a way not to be trapped inside the very trust she had earned. Elena took the paper. Her fingers brushed his for less than a second. Neither moved away sharply. Neither held on. The almost touch remained in the air, more honest, because it did not pretend danger had vanished. This sounds like something a lawyer wrote, she said, reading the first line. It is. The second line sounds like you rewrote it. His mouth moved slightly. You object. No. Good. The quiet between them warmed at the edges. Outside, rain moved harder against the glass. Inside, Lucia's photograph watched over a room that had finally been allowed to breathe. Elena stepped 1 foot over the threshold. Matteo noticed. He did not comment. That restraint mattered more than any welcome. Rojas was not alone. He said, I know. There will be more pressure. I know that too. I can assign a car for you, a different apartment, money enough to leave the city if you want. Elena looked at the photograph, then at the open door behind her, and if I don't want to leave, Matteo's eyes held hers, and something passed through them that he did not turn into a claim. Desire, maybe, fear. Certainly, the recognition that the woman before him had become necessary in a way he could not command without destroying the thing that made her necessary. Then you stay, because you choose to, he said. And when you choose not to, the door remains open. For the first time since the rose stem appeared under the cutter, Elena felt the tension in her shoulders loosen, only slightly. Enough. Weeks later, the west hallway no longer held a glass at midnight. Sometimes Matteo passed it without stopping. Sometimes he paused the brief stillness, the old ache trying to call him back. He would look once toward the open room, then toward the rain-dark window, where her reflection sometimes waited behind him. He never asked her to save him from memory. He asked, when needed, what am I missing? And she answered when she knew. That was how trust entered the mansion, not as a confession under soft music, not as a kiss beside a dangerous door. It entered in the shape of a question, Powerful men rarely ask, and careful women rarely get permission to answer. One evening, after the rain cleared and the amber lights came on, Elena found a single white rose in the East Library. For one breath, her body went cold. Then she saw the note beside it, for Lucia. It read, in the open, no threat, no hidden hour, no accusation folded into grief, just a flower placed where anyone could see it free from the old ritual that had made softness dangerous. Matteo stood near the doorway. Watching her read it, Elena looked at the rose, then at him, and gave the smallest nod. Only then did he step into the room. He stood beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched, far enough that the choice remained hers. The house went on breathing around them. Danger had not disappeared. It had simply lost the right to be the only thing between them. Elena had once believed being unseen was the safest way to live in a house like this. Matteo had once believed a locked room could keep grief loyal. They were both wrong. By the time morning light reached the west hallway, the door remained open, the console stayed bare, and the woman who had found his only weakness was no longer standing behind him. She was beside him,